while, he was able to borrow horses to ride. And there was a nice walk to exercise them, which went out around onto the beach before turning back, and you could retrace your steps to the stables. And now, I'm not very competent on a horse, but I have done it before. So I put on a helmet and went out with him to exercise these two horses. And the first half of the walk was very pleasant. On a few occasions, my horse stopped and it wouldn't progress until I cajoled it or it had finished eating whatever it had bent down to munch on that had caught its eye. And then we went out onto the beach and it was quite magnificent. It was beautiful. It was a great experience of nature. Um, there were the horse's hooves splashing in the shallow surf. And then we turned around and headed for home. And then it happened. My horse, I think it was this creature being willful rather than my lack of riding competence. Anyway, my horse knew that a proper lunch awaited him back at the stables, and he knew that at the halfway point had been reached, and the route back was just where we'd gone, and he didn't want to casually walk. He wanted to get there in a hurry. So without my prompting, this horse just set off at speed. We started to gallop, and pretty soon we were at a canter. I was prepared for walking and maybe a little bit of trotting, but this was way out of my comfort zone as a rider. I just grabbed the side of the horse with my legs and its neck with my arms and held on as we dashed for what felt like breakneck speed towards the direction of the stables. Happily, I stayed on, and happily, my friend caught us up and slowed the creature down. I was definitely undignified and incompetent, but I'm not putting all the blame on myself. That horse is really quite a contrast to the poise and the beauty that we see on the television with the racing or the show jumping. Now, in your Bibles, you might open John chapter 8 and find this passage that we just had read in brackets or in italics, because in the earliest manuscripts of John, this incident doesn't occur. But many scholars think it was written by Luke, and this incident in the life of Jesus is attached here by the early church. And it's a parallel to how Jesus treats social outcasts, Mary Magdalene, lepers, tax collectors. And it's also an illustration of what the Old Testament predicted about the Messiah. You remember that phrase, a bruised reed he will not break, and a smoking wick he will not put out, until he brings forth judgment to victory. What does that mean? That Jesus combines compassion and judgment so perfectly. And we'll see here that his combination of gentleness and bravery shows us that he is the most integrated, balanced, wise human being that we've ever seen. Jesus is the key to understanding Colossians, especially passages about how different people should relate to one another. Look at the difference between women and men. Now, that's a major difficulty for many of us in 21st century London. How can you differentiate like that? But look, this isn't about hierarchy or patriarchy. It's actually about the opposite. It's about how we relate to one another in terms of the kingdom, where we operate out of a characteristic known as humility. It's only as we look at humility, at the humble character of Jesus, that we have our character changed to his own likeness. And here in John chapter 8 is a place where Jesus' own humility is exhibited, and we see how we can get that. So in the first half of the story, the plot thickens. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say?" Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. See how the phrase "caught in adultery" is repeated. The law of Moses sounds like there were harsh punishments, but it actually had a very high threshold of evidence. In order to convict someone of adultery, it wasn't good enough to say, "I saw them come out of the bedroom," or even, "I saw them in bed together." No, two independent witnesses had to actually witness the adultery taking place. And so for that reason, being accused, let alone found guilty, was very rare. They're bringing this woman to Jesus, and she's being used as a trap. Almost nobody was convicted, and so almost nobody was ever executed. But they wanted to get to him. And this is quite a brilliant trap, actually. Because the law of Moses said that she should be stoned. It does in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. So they point the finger at him, and what do you say? They think they've got him on the horns of a dilemma. On the one hand, he could say, "Save the woman and ignore the law." Cue headlines, "The Messiah tramples on the law of God." Or on the other hand, they could say that you could say that you need to respect the law, and they'd have him again. They hated all this talk that attracted the prostitutes and the tax collectors, the marginals, the outcasts. Jesus talked about grace and forgiveness. So if the woman gets stoned, the headlines are going to read, "Here's your great Messiah. Come to me with your weaknesses, and I'll have you executed." You have to trample on her, or you have to trample on the law. Jesus' response shows us so much about humility. If you're humble, you contain in your personality tremendous gentleness, but also bravery. If you're gentle and not brave, or brave and not gentle, you're not humble. It's this combination that leads to true humility. See how Jesus doesn't treat this woman as if she's beneath him. Compared with the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, who are scornful, they make her stand in front of everybody. If you have humility, you're never haughty towards people. You never look down on them. You're never condescending, never mock, filled with scorn. If you're dealing with someone who is below you, as this woman was to Jesus morally, he didn't treat her as below him. We have to watch our tone of voice. We have to watch our actions. Even to Jesus' betrayers. There was Judas. What did Jesus do? Washed his feet. There's Peter talking bluster, about to deny Jesus. And what does he say? "Simon, Simon," with such gentleness. On the other hand, the bravery. What is Jesus doing? Doodling in the dirt. His messiahship is at stake. This woman's life is at stake. This is a crux event. What's he doing? Doodling in the dirt. Now, there's all sorts of theories, but the Bible doesn't tell us. So the writer is trying to get across that he is unflappable. There's a lot of pressure right now, but he is calm. He is both gentle and brave. Think of the horse, not my willful one, but those impressive ones we see on the streets or we see on the TV. The power is contained. In fact, it is submissive, responsive to the desire of the rider. Jesus didn't give up his power. He is not exercising it. He could blow them all away. But he is submitting everything he is and instead is receptive to us. He's not being weak. Most of us feel inferior and act superior to compensate for it. Jesus knows he was superior and acts inferior. He puts all his power and glory to the interests of other people. So Jesus gets up from doodling in the dirt. He straightened up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Again, he stooped down to write on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. This is incredible. He absolutely honors the law. He's actually quoting the law by saying, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." He's quoting. You could switch that around. You can't yourself be an adulterer if you're going to kill somebody for adultery. Jesus knows that their culture, like most cultures, is that there's a double standard for women. The laws of evidence, though, demand that if you've witnessed adultery, both the man and the woman get stoned. But where's the man? Either they saw the action and only brought the woman, in which case they're guilty of partiality, and that's a serious offense, or they didn't really see, and they're guilty of false witness. Without the man, there's no way. They are without sin themselves. Jesus is saying that he honors the law, including the one against partiality, including the one against false witness, including the one against adultery. He's saying, in effect, by the law, I deny you the right to be her executioners. And then he turns to her and says, what is at the heart of the gospel? Has no one condemned you? No one, sir, she said. Then neither do I condemn you, Jesus declared. Go now and leave your life of sin. This is a sin. You are guilty. I don't condemn you. How can he do it? In one film version of this event, the filmmakers add a little detail that is actually quite a good illustration of something that's going on here. In the film, Jesus picks up a rock and he looks at the people gathered round the woman, and he puts the rock down on the ground in front of them as a challenge to the one who is without sin to throw the first stone. Here it is, he's saying. The men leave. And in the film, the rock gets picked up again by Jesus, and he throws it. He doesn't throw it idly away from the scene. The film has him looking at this rock and then casting it down on the ground at his own feet. The point in this subtle gesture is well made. Jesus is the only one who could throw a stone. He is the only one without sin. Yet the direction of punishment is not at the woman. It's not at you and me. It's on himself. This is it. Every other religion says you are guilty and condemned, or you are not guilty and not condemned. Only the gospel of Jesus says to all of us that you are guilty, but you are not condemned. You are a sinner, and you are utterly accepted. Jesus doesn't say, first go and sin no more, and then I won't condemn you. The order is important. The work is his, not ours. That's how Paul can say in Romans chapter 8, verse 1, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Friends, you and I are surrounded by things that are accusing us, by temptations, by failures, by fears. But because of Jesus' life and death and resurrection, they have no hold on you. You are not condemned. So only the woman is left. What happens next? That's it. End of story. But it must have changed her. How do we know? Everybody is gone. There's their exchange. The only possible way we would know today is through her telling that story to people then. I've been healed. I've been converted. I've been changed. This humility, this combination of gentleness and bravery, it can change you too. It can set you free. For example, from worry. Are you always worrying? I know how my life is going to go and God isn't going to do it. Humility means you stop that. You say, hey, I don't know how my life is going to go. But Lord, you know. You are God and I am not. That's okay. Humility leads to joy. A humble person sees each element of life as a gift. The food as a gift. The weather is a gift. My friends are a gift. My life is a gift. Humility sets you free from needing to focus on yourself. It sets you free from self-consciousness. You don't need to justify yourself to other people anymore because God has already justified you. Do you see how Jesus operates with such poise and beauty? That's what humility looks like. We're going to sing in a moment, and I might invite Andy to come and get ready to play. You would have had those words from Colossians, and I know you're going through Colossians at the moment, and you've seen that word submit come up. And for some of us, that's a bit of a trigger word. But here we see that Jesus submits his power to us. I don't condemn you because I will be condemned for you. Because on the cross, because of the cross, you and I won't have even a little pebble of God's wrath because he carries all the wrath, the justice of God on all human sin, on him. Look to Jesus, and those accusers will go away. You're all by yourself with him. He asks, is there anything that you're feeling bad about yourself? There's anything that's accusing you? No, because I am here with you. Friends, embrace his humility. This great power allows us to straddle him, to be carried by him. You might want to, in your mind's eye, lean forward and hold on to him. Hold on to this humble and powerful companion. But this time not out of fear, but out of humble love. We're no longer slaves to fear. Let's stand and sing.